PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are going to be doing something a bit different today, as instead of focusing on the Vegas Golden Knights, Henderson Silver Knights, UNLV Rebels like we normally do, we are going to pivot and go over to the NHL and talk about the Philadelphia Flyers. And most importantly, when it comes to the Philadelphia Flyers, we're going to address the question, how do you fix the Philadelphia Flyers? Like, what can be done to make the Flyers a winning team? Where do Philadelphia go from here? And when it comes to the management, when it comes to front office and Danny Briere, what steps need to be done in order for Philadelphia to be a winning franchise once again, to get back to playoff contention? Because it's been a while since Philadelphia has been a winning franchise in the NHL. So who needs to be a main focal point? Is there some moves that need to be made with the Philadelphia Flyers? And most importantly, in terms of cap space, we're also going to be talking about, is there certain luxuries that the Philadelphia Flyers have and what the future may hold for the Philadelphia Flyers? So we're going to talk about all of it on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub with your host, Ian Rachiele. Now, before we get into this episode, I do want to quickly acknowledge PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. Go to our website, www.prconnectionsradio.com. We have over a dozen shows on the platform, including this one, so I recommend checking those out. Go to our social media pages. We are all on all major platforms at Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you want to follow your host, I am right down here at Ian J. Rachiele. So how exactly do we see the Philadelphia Flyers achieving this, right? How can you fix the Philadelphia Flyers? Because that's the subject of this video. Because right now, when we look at the date that we are recording this video, you really have to sit here and question not only the roster, but the front office. General manager Danny Briere, this is his second season. That's going to be entering, year two of him being the general manager. They have the head coach, John Tortorella. But this is an organization out there in Philadelphia that you really have to sit there and say, what's the end goal here? Because if your goal is to start doing a massive rebuild, then they're not doing it correctly. If the goal is to win, I really don't see how that's going to be accomplished. If this is a team that's going to be in the middle of the road trying to kind of compete for like a wild card spot, I don't see how that's going to go down. Now, I will mention this. There is upside in Philadelphia. There are some talent that is no doubt in my mind going to be a big, vital part of what Philadelphia is trying to do moving forward. When it comes to Matej Michkov, he is going to be a big vocal point of this team. With all the hype that was surrounded about him in the draft, not this year, but the draft previously, him falling in that draft during the Connor Bedard sweepstakes and him going to Philadelphia, it was a massive step for the Philadelphia Flyers. It seemed like they were one of the biggest winners of the NHL draft during that point. You also have to look at the farm system the Philadelphia Flyers have. It is strong. It is a very strong farm system the Philadelphia Flyers have. Can you build off of that? That's what we need to know. When it comes to the veterans you have in Philadelphia, they got a good amount of guys who have been in the professional hockey for a decade or more at this point. There are some players who are in year 8, year 9, year 10 of being a Philadelphia Flyer, and you kind of wonder where if you start another rebuild, are they going to want to be around for that? When it comes to doing a rebuild, you have guys who are making $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, and you're planning on tearing it down. Are you going to be able to get rid of those contracts? Are there going to be certain people that you're going to have to move on from if you are the Philadelphia Flyers? There's so many things that we have to kind of acknowledge when it comes to the Philadelphia Flyers, and why this episode is really about the 4 steps you need to fix the Philadelphia Flyers. And I'm going to address one point because it's not going to be on here. I am not going to be firing Danny Briere. All right, Danny Briere being in year 2, give him a chance and see if he can turn it around. Now, after year 3 or after year 4, if you're not seeing any progress from Danny Briere, then okay, move on from him. It's all good and dandy. But with this team and the way it's being constructed right now, I would not change the general manager situation unless you have such an awful year that it's justified. All right, let's say that you have the worst record in all of the NHL, which, considering the fact that Anaheim still exists, San Jose still exists, I think Columbus, this is going to be a team that's going to take a while to get out of the situation that they're currently in. I highly doubt that Philadelphia will finish with the worst record in the NHL. But if they did, then maybe you have justification for Danny Briere being fired. But when it comes to them rebuilding and reshuffling and kind of like, making steps when it comes to this organization, unless the wheels completely fall off, do not get rid of Danny Briere. So that's not one of my steps. I'm keeping Danny Briere for this season and for the season afterwards. What I'm doing is I'm going to start at the NHL trade deadline. All right, that's going to be the first part of the Philadelphia Flyers being fixed. Okay, this season, looking at the roster we have now, unless they could find a way to make a trade prior to the trade deadline, I wouldn't recommend it. With it being, beginning of the season, you're going to have, all the stuff that happened there, training camp, preseason, you have opening day and everything like that. So overall, the Philadelphia Flyers, you're not going to make big moves at this point. But if you are Philadelphia, this is the NHL trade deadline. That's going to be step 1 for Philadelphia. And step 1 is going to be getting rid of bad contracts. And I have not 1, not 2, not 3, but I have 4 bad contracts that I am going to be looking to get rid of if I'm the Philadelphia Flyers. So for this step 1 that I'm going to put on the board right here, getting rid of bad contracts is a key for Philadelphia. And the first one that you're going to be moving off from, and him being put on waivers and being sent down to the AHL last year, and in fact, the beginning of 2024, it was a bad sign to begin with. And I highly doubt that he's going to be in the NHL. He's just going to be a dead cap for Philadelphia. But if you can get rid of Cal Peterson's contract, I highly would recommend it. Now, you have not 1, but you have a trio of young goaltenders that are right now trying to prove themselves in Philadelphia. You actually have 2 goaltenders. One is 22 and one is 25, and they are really starting to show some progression at the end of last season. And we saw in training camp and in preseason that these are goaltenders that are young and hungry. And when they acquired the contract of Cal Peterson, when they made that trade this past offseason, not this one, but the year prior, and they acquired his contract, it was pretty alarming that Cal Peterson was put on waivers at the beginning of this year, January 2024. And it really was a situation where he's now in the AHL, going to most likely be in the AHL for the majority of the year, unless injuries just really take a turn on Philadelphia. But if I can get rid of Cal Peterson's contract, if you can terminate it, if you can buy it out, if there's a team that is so desperate for goaltending due to injuries throughout the year that they give up a 6th-round pick or a 7th-round pick for Cal Peterson, that is the first bad contract I'm going to get rid of. Now, according to Puckpedia, I'm so used to saying cap friendly, but according to Puckpedia, here is the contract for Cal Peterson. Now, his cap hit is $5 million. His base salary is $6 million. And for the Philadelphia Flyers, if I did want to wait till the end of the year where he becomes an unrestricted free agent, yes, technically it's plausible, but I'm just pointing out that because he is, even in the minors, he'd be a buried cap hit of around $3.5 million. That is a lot of money that you're putting down in the minors since, like I said, you put him on waivers at the beginning of the year in January 2024, and he was in the AHL at the end of 23-24. So for Cal Peterson, that's the first bad contract that I'm getting rid of. If you're the Philadelphia Flyers, you move on from that because of the young goaltenders you have in the wings. Now, defensively, you have not one, but you have two really bad contracts that I personally would move on. And the first one is not a surprise to anybody. Even Philadelphia Flyers fans, you would be shaking your head agreeing that this guy needs to be moved off from. The second one is a bit surprising, but I will explain why I am saying that. Now, the first one is going to be somebody who has not even played in a couple of years. He suffered an unfortunate, looks like career-ending injury. And, of course, I'm talking about Ryan Ellis. And when Ryan Ellis was acquired by the Nashville Predators all the way back in 21-22, it was a three-way trade. Cody Glass went to Nashville. Nolan Patrick went to Vegas. And then y'all said he had Ryan Ellis come to Philadelphia. Well, because of that situation, because of the fact that he has not played, he has had a $6 million cap hit that has been with the Philadelphia Flyers over the last couple of seasons. Now, it's on IR. I understand people are going to try to make that disclaimer saying, well, it's on IR. The reason why you want to get rid of it. The reason why is kind of similar to the Shea Weber situation that the Vegas Golden Knights had a couple years back. Similar to the way that Nicholas Yamerson with the Arizona Coyotes. You've had a bunch of teams that had to do this where they need to free up cap space so they get rid of a long-term IR contract to make that happen. And if anyone understands the Philadelphia Flyers cap space situation, they're under the cap space, but it's not by a lot. They are kind of around the ceiling of what the cap hit is in the NHL. So if you want to free up cap space and you want to free up money for the next offseason prior, this is a guy in Ryan Ellis who is going to be under contract for the next 2 seasons for the Philadelphia Flyers organization. So if there's a way that I could give up that contract and put it on someone like Anaheim, put it on somebody like the Utah Hockey Club, put it on an organization that has cap space, I would recommend it. Because at this point in time, he is a contract that's just on the books. He's never going to play. He had that injury. He's done. But I would say to do to Ryan Ellis what the Montreal Canadiens did to Shea Weber, and that was trade him to Vegas. And then Vegas, about a half a season later, traded him over to Arizona. And if I recall it correctly, I think he's still on the books with the Utah Hockey Club because Arizona got absorbed by Utah. So when it comes to that situation, it is a bad contract in terms of the cap hit part of it. So if you're the Philadelphia Flyers, that's the first one. Like I said, kind of obvious. But I would try to find a way to put this on a team that has cap space, so that way they can kind of eat some dead cap, but it frees up for Philadelphia. Now the second one is Rasmus Ristolainen. I didn't understand why Philadelphia went out and acquired him when they did. I still don't understand why Philadelphia went out and acquired Ristolainen. The way he plays the game, the way that he runs a defense, it doesn't mesh with Philadelphia. John Tortorella, that system, I still don't get why Rasmus Ristolainen is still here. And the worst part about Ristolainen is his contract. I mean, he has a little over $5 million cap hit with the Philadelphia Flyers. And the worst part about Ristolainen is his stats really don't back up being paid $5 million from the Philadelphia Flyers. I didn't understand the move at the time. Still don't get why he's in Philadelphia. And with him having 2 years left on his deal, that means that the Philadelphia Flyers would have to keep him employed until 2027. So I'm getting rid of Cal Peterson's contract because that's a $5 million cap hit you're bearing in the minors. I'm getting rid of Ryan Ellis's contract, not just because it's a long-term IR situation, but I'm thinking about trying to free up cap space. And then Rasmus Ristolainen, do you really need him? I mean, defensively, you have Cam York, Jamie Drysdale, who, yes, has been questionable at times, but he's still a young guy. You have Senheim. I mean, this is a defense that actually is starting to build some actual good parts in Philadelphia. They have some young guys in Philadelphia that are developing. So you really don't need Ristolainen at this point. So that would be the bad contracts that I would get rid of. Now, I'm not going to talk about the guys who are going to be free agents next year. Trust me, 37-year-old Eric Johnson is not going to be on step one, all right? He's a one and done, brought in as a veteran. All right, I'm not going to talk about Scott Lawton, 30 years old. This is going to be a guy who's a good center, but he's still, part of the Philadelphia Flyers organization. I'm not bringing up those guys. I'm simply bringing up two really bad contracts and then one contract that's on long-term IR that they could, if they could have a luxury of getting rid of, I would recommend it. So that is the first step. The 2025 NHL trade deadline, I'm getting rid of some bad contracts, freeing up cap space for Philadelphia, because according to Puckpedia, the Philadelphia Flyers only have a little over $10 million. But overall, with the Philadelphia Flyers organization, that would be the first step that I am taking at the 2025 NHL trade deadline. Step 2 is going to be the 2025 offseason, okay? I am looking past the 24-25 season. We've dealt with the trade deadline. And if the Philadelphia Flyers make the playoffs, I will be stunningly shocked. But for argument's sake, let's say that Philadelphia misses the playoffs in 24-25, and we are now at the offseason. Step 2 seems kind of obvious, but I'm going to put it out in print anyway. John Tortorella, you're a legend. Hockey fans love you. I know there's going to be a bunch of people that would never want to see you get fired, but if the Philadelphia Flyers are entering this rebuild and they're rebuilding this organization, if Danny Briere is really going to want to achieve this, then he's going to need to build up a new system, and that is going to have to involve a different coach. So I say after 25, you move on from John Tortorella and you bring in a new coach. Now, am I insisting that they keep one of their assistant coaches, like a guy like Rocky Thompson, and elevate them to be a head coach? Not exactly. But what I will mention is that with all of the head coaches that have been fired over the past season and a half, there are plenty of viable candidates that the Philadelphia Flyers can go out and get. There is a good amount of head coaches that you can sit there and say, you know what, we're going to go out and get somebody that has championship experience. We're going to bring in somebody that can have a new system and a new idea on how to build this team. And it's also going to have to rely on the ownership and front office to spend a little money. But I would recommend going out and getting a top 10 quality coach in the NHL. And two options I have. All right, these are the two people that I would bring in if I was the Philadelphia Flyers general manager. Now, the first option that I'm going to be going with, and yes, this is going to be some Vegas Golden Knights bias, but I will openly admit it. Gerard Gallant, after being fired from the New York Rangers, he is still looking for a head coaching job. He has been the head coach of multiple teams in the NHL. And more importantly, when it comes to Gerard Gallant, that first season that he gets hired is the best season that he has. He did it in Vegas. He did it in New York. He did it. I think he did it in Florida. He did it in Columbus. Like, when it comes to a guy like Gerard Gallant, he starts out pretty high. It's just afterwards it becomes a problem. But if you're looking for like a winning culture, and if you're looking for somebody who has been someone who has won and made the postseason, a guy like Gerard Gallant would be someone that I would recommend when it comes to that situation. The second one is someone who actually has been a head coach this past season. And in my opinion, I think him being an associate coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think he deserves a second chance to being a head coach, and that is Lane Lambert. When Lane Lambert replaced Barry Trotz out there in the New York Islanders, that first season, they made the playoffs. They lost in the first round. Yes, the second season got away from him. He got fired. They replaced him with Patrick Waugh. But if you're a guy like Lane Lambert, he is someone who actually was showing some progress with the New York Islanders. You actually started to see the system out there with New York. Now, a lot of people are going to say that's just Barry Trotz being Barry Trotz. But when it comes to the New York Islanders organization, I really look at it and saying that, if Lane Lambert would have been able to go there for maybe a little bit longer, we could see what he could have come up with long-term as a system. So I think Lane Lambert would actually be a very good idea for the Philadelphia Flyers and what they're trying to achieve here in Philadelphia. Or I said Gerard Gallant, considering his winning success and what he did here. But we have 2 steps left. All right, step 1 was getting rid of bad contracts for the Philadelphia Flyers. At the trade deadline, trying to get rid of as many bad contracts as possible. Step 2 in the 2025 NHL offseason is moving on from John Tortorella. You fire him and you bring in a replacement, someone who's going to really bring in his system that's going to help out with a rebuild with the Philadelphia Flyers. But step 3, and this is vital, you build around Matej Michkov. All right? He is a future superstar in the NHL. When you got to see him in preseason and when you've gotten to see what he can do in terms of highlights and you've seen his YouTube clips, he is a real deal. We have also seen that this is somebody that the Philadelphia Flyers, when Danny Briere picked him up, he was all smiling from ear to ear because they know the talent that Matej Michkov has in Philadelphia. And if I'm Philadelphia, yes, you do have some really promising young guys in the organization. I'm not going to take anything away from what they are building. But he is your piece. He is your core. He is the guy that you need to build this team around. So in the 2025 offseason, regardless if you have a little over $10 million or if you do what I did in step 1 and you free up about additional $10 million in cap space, that means that you have $20 million to build around Matej Michkov. All right, in the forwards, they have, I think, a good solid top 6. The middle 6 is a little bit but it's kind of improving. The bottom 6, obviously, there can be improvements on any bottom 6 really in the NHL, except for 1 or 2. But overall, if I'm Philadelphia, I am strengthening the forwards because you do have some young guys. Tyson Forster, by the way, I think that he's a really good player long-term for the Philadelphia Flyers organization. Of course, you have Travis Korsney. You have Scott Lawton, who I mentioned earlier. You also have your captain, Sean Courtier. So, overall, when it comes to the Philadelphia Flyers organization, I really sit here and say if you have Matej Michkov, you build around him in the offseason. You take your money and you build around him. Because, defensively, you have 4 really solid defensemen in the organization. Goaltending-wise, you have 2 young goaltenders who are just starting to get built now. They're progressing with each season they're in the NHL. So I would say build around him. And some free agents that you can maybe come to mind. I'm not going to name every single free agent, but here's like 3 or 4 that I will mention for the Philadelphia Flyers. So, just for example, people that, like I said, for middle 6 or bottom 6 type of guys, I would say go to the Utah Hockey Club, Alexander Kerfoot. He is someone that over the past few years has shown that he could be a dependable middle 6 forward for almost every team he's been on. Well, on Toronto, Colorado, Arizona, now Utah. If you want to need a bottom 6 guy, someone who's good for the locker room, Trevor Lewis out there from the LA Kings. He's been, in the NHL for so many years. So if you need a veteran to be out there in the bottom 6, maybe call up the Washington Capitals. And then, I would say a guy like Andrew Mangiapane, someone who has been out there in Calgary, done pretty solid, out there in Washington. So, when it comes to Philadelphia Flyers organization, when I say build around Matej Michkov, you already have, like I said, you have Morgan Frost, you have Tyson Forrester. I mean, you have some good, young, up-and-coming guys that are on the forwards, but what you need is some depth in that middle 6 and bottom 6 category. So, yeah, that's kind of like a few people I would say, give a couple $1 million to for someone like an Alexander Kerfoot or an Andrew Mangiapane. This would be some moves that when it comes to Philadelphia Flyers, I think would help out the depth of Philadelphia. And then lastly, here on this show, and this is step 4, you have 3 first-round picks in 2025. Now, you have your original first-round pick. Congratulations. You did not trade that away. But then you have your 2 additional ones. All right, you acquired the Colorado Avalanche 2025 first-round pick when you acquired Ryan Johansson by giving up Sean Walker. All right, when you gave up Walker and you sent him at the trade deadline to Colorado, when you acquired Johansson's contract and you acquired a first-round pick, now Colorado is most likely going to be a playoff team once again like they've been in the past few years. So this is probably going to be in the 20s next year, but a first-round pick is still a first-round pick. And then the last first-round pick you have is from the Edmonton Oilers. All right, when Edmonton Oilers traded back into the first round in 2024, they gave up their first-round pick to make that deal happen. So if you're the Philadelphia Flyers, you're going to have your pick, which is going to, let's just be bluntly honest, a top 10 pick. Edmonton is going to be in the low teens to high 20s, and then Colorado is going to be in the 20s if we see Colorado doing what we saw in our season preview we did a while back. So if you're Philadelphia, now we don't see this happen often in the NHL, but when you have a team that has a trio of first-round picks, you have to nail it. Regardless if it was Boston a couple of years back, I know the New York Islanders were in the similar situation. Vegas Golden Knights, when they were an expansion team, had a trio of first-round picks back in 2017. And I believe the most recent example was the Columbus Blue Jackets. I believe the Columbus Blue Jackets had a trio of first-round picks about 3 or 4 years ago. So if you nail the 2025 NHL draft, right, and look at the timeline of what I did in this video. All right, step 1 was at the 2025 NHL trade deadline. Step 2 was at the end of the 25 season. Step 3 was in the 2025 NHL offseason. And then step 4 is in June at the Microsoft Theater out there in Los Angeles for the NHL draft. So I'm essentially telling you that you can fix Philadelphia, but it's going to be in a 12-month process. And I'll say it once again. Can you fix Philadelphia? Yes, you can. But how you're going to do it is by getting rid of bad contracts at the trade deadline. You're going to fire John Tortorella after the season and hire somebody else and bring in their system for a rebuilding Philadelphia Flyers team. Step 3 is you build around Matej Michkov. You have this young talent. You have a good farm system that's progressing and getting better. And you're going to have some money in free agency, and you can try to help beef up that middle 6 and bottom 6 and maybe add 1 or 2 extra defensemen for defenseman depth. And then step 4, come June, you nail the 2025 NHL draft. And with your trio of first-round picks, the Philadelphia Flyers find a way to get quality talent in the first round. So this is just a different video I wanted to try here on Vegas Hockey Hub. Like I said, just something new, something I wanted to try on this channel. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If you want to like this video, that'd be great. How if you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, it would help us out a lot. And if you can share this to all your friends all around the world, we would appreciate it. And until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and this is Vegas Hockey Hub on PR Connections Radio.